Again, let's start with a short meditation, 15 minutes, to help us to relax the body and mind. So in this practice we're going to go into the body, into the rhythm of the breath. Setting the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. And relaxing more deeply with each out-breath. Allowing the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And with each out-breath, letting go of any thoughts that may have arisen, happily releasing them. And allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Simply becoming aware of the rhythm of the breath. Noticing if it's long or short, deep or shallow, regular or irregular, without trying to modify it in any way. Simply noticing the rhythm of the breath. So today we're looking at the Vipassana practice, the wisdom practice within the Mahayana Buddhist traditions, based on these teachings from the Buddha called the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, or the Prajna Paramita in Sanskrit. And so here then we have this idea of emptiness, that in these teachings the Buddha was saying that we need to investigate both ourselves and the world around us, and if we do, we'll come to realize things are not existing as they appear. Even though there appears to be an independent objective world there and an independent subjective me here, when we investigate closely, we'll come to see that nothing exists independently. Everything's empty of independent existence. So this is the idea of emptiness. And we said that the flip side of emptiness, the fact that everything's not independent, means everything is dependent. And we looked at things being dependent in three ways here, in terms of causes, conditions, parts, and labelling. And we were looking at the idea of causes and conditions based on the idea of labelling, the third point. And I'd like to add one more thing there and then talk a little bit about parts, and then we'll go on to the next presentation. We say that the plant exists depending on causes and conditions, or in other words, the result depends on causes and conditions. But this view of emptiness is also saying the cause depends on the result. So how does the cause depend on the result? That's not the answer. That's true, but that's not the answer.
Without the result, there is no cause. It's not a cause if there is no result. It's not a cause.
You can't call it a cause. Yeah, that's the answer. So the answer is that you can't call something a cause unless you have the idea result. You can't call something a seed unless you have the idea plant. Whether or not it produces a plant is irrelevant. So that's how cause depends on result. Now, parts. We say that everything exists depending on its parts, but we said that you can't find the object in the basis. So pen is something labelled depending on its parts. But is there a pen to be found here in the basis? Is this a pen? No. Is this tube a pen? No. Is this piece of plastic a pen? No. Is this tube a pen? No. Is the ink inside a pen? No. Is the round ball on the end a pen? No. Where's the pen? And people go, oh, that's easy. It's the collection of that stuff. There we go. Oh, no. In a certain shape. Okay, so you have to tell me when the pen comes into existence. No.
No.
Oh, what about that?
Not so important.
Oh, but it was before, but now it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. So what we understand from this is the pen comes into existence when this configuration of data closely enough resembles our concept of pen. And generally our concepts have at least two parts, appearance and functionality. So when this appears closely enough to our idea of pen, and it seems to function according to our idea of pen, then there's a pen. That's why for some of us, even with this bit gone, we can say pen, because it seems to be closely enough our idea of pen, and it seems to function according to our idea of pen. So therefore, the pen exists depending on its parts, meaning the pen is not the collection of the parts. There's no pen to be found there in the basis. The only pen that exists is the one within our conceptual framework. if the pen existed from its own side, independent of our conceptual framework, then as I think someone mentioned earlier, if a caveman walked in the door, they'd pick it up and start writing with it. But I think the caveman may look at that and say, oh, okay, I can stab something with that. And if a dog came in here, they'd probably see it as like a chewing stick, something to chew on. And if a tiny little ant came here, they may see some sort of home to live in. So is this a pen, a weapon, a chewing stick, or a home? From its own side, none of those things. From the side of the observer, all of those things. So the pen exists depending on its parts. So therefore, the pen is not the collection of the parts, rather the pen is merely labelled depending on the collection of the parts. If we can appreciate those two things are not saying the same thing, we're beginning to understand something about emptiness. And likewise, we say that the pen depends on its parts.
You just repeat it, please.
Okay. The two statements are, the pen is the collection of the parts, versus the pen is merely labelled depending on the collection of the parts. So we say that the pen exists depending on the parts, so the whole depends on the parts, but also the part depends on the whole. Same reason as before. You can only call this part of a pen if you have the idea pen, otherwise the idea part has no meaning. So the question then is, this is how things exist, that things are not independently existent, they depend on causes and conditions, parts and labelling. And intellectually we may accept that. But I think experientially that's not how we see things. Experientially, what we are doing is we are turning the lines that we draw into boundaries. We are seeing the world as already divided up into many separate discrete things already. We're not really experientially aware of the fact that we are creating this world of experience through our conceptual framework. But then you ask, well, why is that a problem? Why is it a problem to see the world as already divided up into many separate things? And we've already touched on that briefly, but I'd like to look at that now in more detail. And to do that, we've got a little chart, handout, that we're going to use, this suffering and its causes chart. So at step one, there's a 6-step process here. At step one in the process, we have seed of ignorance.
What is the chart?
Suffering and its causes.
Suffering and its causes. At the first step in the process, we have what's called seed of ignorance. And here ignorance is a specific ignorance. It's the ignorance, misunderstanding nature of reality. In fact, here, this is the ignorance which grasps onto independent me, independent world. And seed of ignorance means habit of ignorance. So we have the habit of grasping onto independent me, independent world. And from a Buddhist perspective, we've had that since we're born and well before. Now, whenever we look out on the world appears to exist independent of us. But this view of emptiness is saying that things do not exist as they appear. Another way of talking about this appearance is that thing, there appears to be subject-object duality. There appears to be me here, an independent world there. So this appearance that we are receiving is called dualistic appearance. And so this view of emptiness is saying that this is deceiving us, that things are not like this. So therefore it's called mistaken dualistic appearance. Now, everything has always appeared to us in this way. We've never seen things in any other way. So there's no reason to question these appearances. And in fact, if we ask anyone else, everyone else will agree with us, yes? It also appears to exist independent of me. So we never question these appearances. We just accept. So that's step 2, ignorance. So ignorance here is just actively grasping onto independent me, independent world. That experientially, that's how we instinctively see things. Now, in every one of our experiences, we have this mental factor called feeling. And the word feeling in Buddhism doesn't mean emotion. It's a translation of the Sanskrit word Vedana. And Vedana is simply experiencing things as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. Neutral means just neither pleasant nor unpleasant. So this is present in all of our experiences. So let's again say we're looking at these flowers. They seem to be existing independent of us. We have the habit of believing that. We just accept that. So we are grasping onto those flowers existing independent of us. And let's say when we see these flowers, we have a pleasant experience. That pleasant experience, together with this grasping or believing they're existing independent of us, will lead us to naturally assume there must be some attractive quality there that's causing my pleasant experience. So we'll see these as inherently attractive or attractive from their own side. And of course, according to this view of emptiness, this is a misconception. Or if I'm having an unpleasant experience when I see these flowers, together with the belief they exist independent of us, we'll naturally assume there must be some unattractive quality there that's causing my unpleasant experience. We'll see them as inherently unattractive. Or if we're having a neutral experience, we'll see them as inherently neutral qualities.